It's not easy living a gay lifestyle. Those who are gay are often scorned, ridiculed, and discriminated against. Psychologist Gregory Herrick coined the term sexual prejudice. His focus is on the psychological processes associated with heterosexuals' attitudes toward gay people. And he links sexual prejudice to other forms of prejudice seen in our society.
So whether you're talking about a person's prejudices based on race, or based on ethnicity or religion, or based on sexuality, there's a common core of psychological processes that seem to be similar across all of them. I use the term sexual prejudice then to focus on heterosexuals' hostilities toward lesbians and gay men.
Has the level of sexual prejudice seen in society changed over the years? The answer is complex because there are multiple ways of measuring sexual prejudice. When it comes to civil liberties and jobs for gays, there has been progress.
This chart shows trends in support for equal rights and job opportunities for lesbians and gay men from the early 1970s until the early 2000s. And what you see is that support has grown consistently during that time. At the same time, there still are other aspects of sexual prejudice that either haven't changed or perhaps in some ways are fluctuating, sometimes getting worse, sometimes getting better.
For example, public opinion fluctuates about the acceptability of a homosexual lifestyle and gay marriage, and attitudes can be influenced by current events.
At this point in our history, homosexuality has become very closely aligned with public debates about moral values and about religion. And so for that reason, I think attitudes toward homosexuality often are ways of expressing one's side or one's point of view in that debate.
Hello?
Hello, I'm Susan Tate, and I'm calling from the University of California at Berkeley's Survey Research Center.
Through telephone survey research, Herrick has been able to measure changing attitudes, taking the pulse of the nation on sexual prejudice.
We'd like to interview you again now since there have been many changes since we last spoke with you.
Sure.
National representative samples of heterosexual men and women of different ages, ethnic backgrounds, and socioeconomic status are interviewed. Some surveys focus on what's called feeling thermometers, where questions are responded to on a scale of 0 to 100.
How about women who are lesbian or homosexual? On a scale from 0 to 100, how would you rate this group?
25.
And there are questions having nothing to do with sexual prejudice.
How about blacks as a group? On a scale from 0 to 100, how would you rate this group? 60.
This slide shows the feeling thermometer scores from a survey, and what we see on the left side of the screen is the average feeling thermometer scores toward different racial and ethnic groups. We see that the scores for whites, blacks, Mexican Americans, and Puerto Ricans are generally high, well above the median of 50. By contrast, the scores are much lower for gay men, lesbians, bisexual women. We also see very large numbers of people giving ratings of 0 to lesbians and gay men, meaning that they have very, very hostile feelings. You always get some 0 ratings on these feeling thermometer measures, regardless of the group, but they tend to be much more common when we're asking about sexual minorities.
What motivates people to develop sexual prejudice?
There isn't a simple answer to that question. In fact, the answer really is it depends. So for some heterosexuals, their attitudes really are very much based on their personal values, especially people who are highly religious, often translate that religious feeling into a sense that there are certain groups who appropriately are the target of their anger.
And sexual prejudice can be a response to peer pressure.
This is especially the case, say, for people who are adolescents or even young adults. There's often a lot of peer group pressure to adopt a particular attitude toward someone who's perceived as being an outsider, like, for example, a lesbian or gay man often might be.
For others, there may be psychological conflict.
They feel inadequate in their own masculinity or in their own femininity. And for some of those people, attacking someone who's a symbol of a man who's not masculine or a woman who's not feminine is a way to try to feel better about themselves. It's usually a losing proposition. It usually doesn't work, but it's a strategy that people employ.
From the survey research, 3 main findings have emerged. First, Heterosexuals' attitudes toward gay males are more negative than attitudes toward lesbians. Second, heterosexual males are more negative overall than are heterosexual females. And third, the most hostile attitudes are expressed by heterosexual males toward gay males.
Men in our society face strong pressures to prove that they're real men, to prove that they're not gay. And one way that a lot of men do that is by expressing very strong levels of sexual prejudice.
As for reducing sexual prejudice, Herrick says getting to know a gay person well can help.
Then they're much more likely than other heterosexuals to have favorable attitudes toward lesbians and gay men. It's not the case that simply knowing someone who's gay always automatically eliminates sexual prejudice, but it does seem to have a very powerful effect.